conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said. And what I said, I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it. But it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. We've got Harold, we've got Dave, and of course, I'm the knucklehead in the background, Keone. I was laughing because I got a message that says, "Hey, what are we doing? You guys left us with a cliffhanger the last couple episodes because some people just started watching. They don't understand like when we just cut the feed off at the end. They didn't get the joke, so they thought it was a
I'm
clip.
as surprised as anyone usually. It's
So first,
usually at my expense, but all right, whatever.
so before I even get into the Fraction MAGA, not great news from leaked emails from the whole Epstein files. Uh, what do you think about what's been leaked and going on with that, Dave?
Oh, I haven't bothered to. I don't know what that content. I know they're leaked emails.
Yeah.
I know that continues to go. I'm just like, I don't need details on this because it seems like a waste of life energy. But I like to know that it's going on, that it's unfolding. Um, but like I say, I think all of this is leading up to whatever happens now that we've had the discharge petition
Mhm.
signed, right? That happened. And so there's a 7-day clock going for the House to vote on ordering the Epstein files released. And so, I think these leaks are really important when the file was being held up and they were very tantalizing and all. The question is now it's the that's the pregame, okay? That now the main event is going on, and we have to see whether or not there's actually going to be files released. We're going to see what happens with Republicans, and so we don't know what's going to happen with that, but so yes, I'm going to disappoint you about the leaked
No,
email.
you're not disappointed. No, we're seeing people losing royal titles because these emails are showing people keeping correspondence even after um, the arrest. What amazes me is just like when you see like a police officer that knows they're wearing body cam, but they still do something ridiculously illegal or something they shouldn't do. Is that you've seen enough footage to know that presidential conversations are recorded in the White House in meetings, and who doesn't know that any email you send, encrypted or not, can be got? Like, and you still just blatantly do these things. Like I was listening to a Nixon recording the other day of him being incredibly racist. And I'm like, he had to know that these are recorded.
Hey, he was recording them.
It's just so
the,
like,
the Nixon recordings, he was doing that, um, but he didn't think they would ever come out. Right, that was the big thing with the Nixon thing. He was keeping them, and he tried to argue, and it went to the Supreme Court as to whether he had to give these things up. He argued executive privilege and was told no, and actually did give them up, and then gave up the whole thing not long after. So, well, there he had a reason to think, hey, these are mine. Why do I have to worry about it? But after Nixon, you should know, no, all these records are public, and it's illegal to get rid of them.
yeah, if it doesn't
Uh,
come out during your term or after your term, it's going to come out eventually some years later. Harold, I want to throw something to you because there's two things that's happening. We're seeing two things. One, there's the MAGA war going on because of Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, and the MAGA people have now start to cannibalize each other and they're fighting. And then we're noticing the black grifters. This is why I'm throwing this to you, Harold. The black grifters, the MAGA black grifters who are now spouting, the ones that were saying there's no such thing as racism, and now things are happening like this is racist. All of a sudden there's racism again. Those are the two things that's happening in MAGA land.
Well, I think with what happened with CK and surprisingly with Fuentes coming out and issuing an apology of some sorts, because the individual responsible was a follower of his, that or Graper, what do you call them? Groypers, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get the A sound out of an O, but okay, I'll go with it. But when you see these types of events occurring, and now they don't know what they want to do in response, because remember, the initial response was to go threaten, call and threaten, or make bomb threats to HBCUs, which I don't know if there's any in Utah. I don't think there are,
No, there's not.
but nonetheless, MAGA is trying to figure out how do we respond when there is internal conflict that happens to go public. It's one thing if there's an issue where, for example, Fuentes says that some MAGA, which is why he had his own separate faction, doesn't go far enough right for him. He wants to go even further right. He wants to be even more racist. Maybe he doesn't realize his last name sounds very foreign, but nonetheless, it's just amazing to me how you want to Americanize individuals, or you want people to become Americanized, but when is too far? Too far. When is too far? Too far. But as relates to now going back to the grifters, they've known it all the whole time. But the checks were rolling in, so we can keep it at bay and deny it. But then when it hits them in the face, now they want to decry. Hey, listen, it's like the boy that cried wolf. You ignored it, ignored it, ignored it. Now when it really happens, there's nobody to come to your rescue. So now they're stuck in a situation where they're going to still try to grift, but it's not as effective as it once was. And so moving forward, prayerfully they'll understand it's going to take a long time for the black community, in all honesty, to trust them because of things that they've said, because of how they try to embrace certain things that were obvious. So yeah, this whole idea of political grifters, it's going to be a really, really interesting next few months, because we're coming into another cycle next year as to how that's going to play out, where they're going to, I guess, pitch their tents, and how those individuals in that grouping will respond to them.
Right,
I'll end my plane.
because here's the thing about grifters. They're fighting for a side that at the end of the day, they don't like you. Here's our favorite grifter, Officer Tatum. Got the backlash. MAGA loves him until he started being extra pro-Israel, and then of course, I don't like Nick Fuentes, but this is the only time that Nick Fuentes made me laugh. Was responding to something that Brandon Tatum said.
Free. He goes, I don't take money from Israel. I don't take money. Oh, you do it for free then? Wow. Wow. Good boy. Good boy. Wow. Good job.
It's so ridiculous. Good boy. Good boy is what he calls him, and this person has been someone on his side. So Officer Tatum responds that, well, you're racist. But Officer Tatum, I thought racism doesn't exist.
Until it hits you in the face. When
Oh,
that hits, it hurts.
well, Dave,
And
oh, I'm sorry.
go
Dave,
ahead. No, no.
doing that the hard way. Our friend, and I say our friend, of course, being facetious, Vivek. Vivek is learning that the
Mhm.
hardest way possible as MAGA people voted for Democrats over him.
And Vivek Cash, everybody, it's just we all saw this, right? And but there are a lot of people who are MAGA supporters, and this is why I think this is becoming a civil war, because there's a lot of people who were just very, very keyed up on this, that no, it's not racism, It's wanting to return to values and other things. And so, Hillary Clinton got into so much trouble for talking about there being a basket of deplorables
Mhm.
amongst Trump supporters. And, at the time, she was trying to say, look, there's some of those folks, but then there's a whole bunch of other people. And she was actually talking about how she needed and Democrats needed to appeal to the people who were not in that basket of deplorables. And so she was actually talking about basically non-deplorables and of course MAGA just said, oh, you all think we're deplorable because that fit their view that the Clintons sneered at him, looked down on him. But now you look at it and go, swastikas. These people are saying they like Hitler. If that is not deplorable, what is? And so I think part of it is a lot of these folks are being confronted with the fact that they have a lot of stinkers in their midst, and that is that's gonna cause a huge problem because this is an identity issue, right? They identify with this, and a war over identity within a movement like this can get very vicious, and
It is
Al
getting.
Qaeda killed more Muslims than they killed Christians because when you're fighting within the movement or within the group, that gets really vicious. The outsiders, Democrats, they're assholes, but you're supposed to be on our side. And this is what they would, say that they'd say. And so, I think this is where we're seeing a lot of this. But there are a lot of Trump supporters were just very adamant that this wasn't racism, and to be confronted with overt stuff. And that's why that's what gave the so-called grifters uh, their their entree, because they were valued for the message, because it was very important to a lot of people to believe there were black Republicans, and there are black Republicans.
There
I
are
mean,
black Republicans, but we know why the MAGA needed the black grifters. If you go out, we've seen Fox do this a million times. You
yeah.
go out and find that black person that'll say that thing that white people want to stereotypically say, and you find that black person that'll say it, and you get them on, and you have them say it, and it's like, look, see, it's not racism. He said it too.
And I I I I have trouble. It lands with a dull thud, but I like to say that we have to look. A lot of people voted for Donald Trump,
Mhm.
right? 70 something million, 80 million, something. I forget what the last total when he won was.
77.
Yeah,
77 to 70. Uh,
it's a metric crap ton.
yeah,
And a lot of these folks are nice people, right? These are, and they're not all, they're not deplorable, and they don't think that they have Hillary. And this is the thing, is they've denied it, and it's been there. And so uh, you know it's easy for us to look at it and say, hey, we've seen this fascism, we've seen the racism, we've seen it because we see it from, and we get my algorithm feeds me everything, right? Everything nasty, everything that is in a negative light about Trump gets fed to me. If I had a different algorithm, TikTok would have figured out, or whatever algorithm we're talking about, the
send you
algorithm would have figured out I wanted the good stuff and would have bathed me in nothing but messages that tell me, no, that's propaganda, that's a lie. Trump is not like that. We are not like that.
but you know the difference?
Now,
The difference when you get either one of those algorithms, you have the common sense to know which one is peeing on your leg and telling you it's water and which one's not, because half the things that you're told you can figure it out in 10 seconds by using the internet. But people won't do that. And yes, Donald Trump did get 77 million people voted for him, but people act like 75 million people didn't vote for Kamala. Like it wasn't, like 77 million voted for Donald and 40 million voted for her. That's a
no,
3 million.
it's a lot of people. What I'm saying is that you can't write off 77 million Americans.
Right. I would. I'd
And
be a
we can't do
fool.
that.
I'd
And
be
it's
a
hard
fool.
not to.
Yeah, I'd be a fool to
Sometimes.
say 77 million people were complete racists. So those aren't. That's not. And I know what you're
No, but
saying. I did.
they're finding out that a chunk of it, I don't know what the number is, but they're finding out that a big part of the movement is that way, and that is causing a lot of
And that's causing because Dave, no newsflash to everybody, you're Caucasian. And one of the things I know you hate, because every Caucasian friend I have hated, is when you get lumped in with everyone who looks like you, being labeled as, well, he people look at you, well, he must have voted for Trump. He's white. He's racist. He's inherently racist. And it's not fair. But like you said, they're learning that a large majority of us are, and you're being lumped in with those people.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and I think their problem is they're finding out that it's a lot of people that are, it's not just anybody, when these young Republicans are being, when congressmen have swastikas in flags posted up in their office, not the congressman, but someone on his staff, they're finding out that, hey, this is hitting close to home. The Charlie Kirk, the Trump, the hate and all this that was spewed there, that was a big part of it. So a lot of folks are just coming around to this on that side, and that's what's causing this, they have to fight back, right? And that's what's causing a lot of the angst. And from the outside, you're like, Nick Fuentes has been doing this forever,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Forever.
how are you suddenly waking up to this? But that's because we have had a different
Well,
point
he
of view.
died down during the Biden years, but it's been able to be trumped up again. No pun intended. Yeah, the way you show that you're inclusive is not having a turning point event with 20,000 people in it, or a Charlie Kirk funeral with 15 plus thousand people in it, and you can spot the 7 black people in the crowd. That's not the way to show inclusion. The Black Feather asks, have you guys been following the group that has been evaluating the election for fraud? No,
Uh, I,
is there? Is that a
yeah,
thing? Yeah.
that is a thing. They've even shown some data in here in Miami-Dade County, where I am, where some of the precincts had more votes cast than had voters registered. And so, how can you have a 253% voter turnout? It just doesn't make sense in some instances. But then you also have some areas in, I think, Pennsylvania and a couple of other areas up north where they're looking into how, you had heavily Democratic districts where Harris got 0 votes, and how certain machines were being tabulated. So there are a couple of instances out there where things are being investigated. And I think early on when they discovered it, people wanted Kamala to kind of hold off on, I guess, stepping down or bowing down to the election results.
Well, you know what this is going to do,
But
right? If
it's
it's
gonna
found
it's
that
gonna
there
get ugly.
has been election fraud, then even though it's been proven that there was no election fraud the last time, here come the conspiracy theorists to say, "See, I told you, there's been
But
massive fraud." Here we go.
but the ownership of Dominion also has recently changed to a Trump supporter, who's people are speculating what could potentially happen if he keeps those contracts with Dominion having experience recently. But and I don't know why they sold it, but in either case, they've sold their company along with their systems and their contracts, which to a Trump supporter who many people are concerned about potential manipulation moving down the road as well. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you want to be careful because you don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. But the reality is, some of this is playing out in some of the smaller courts in our country, and if it does hit big and hit real soon, it's going to cause us to need to watch and pay close attention to what happens in 2026.
Okay, Dave, do that thing where you talk me off
Uh-oh.
the ledge and say this is a nothing burger. Because sometimes when we do this, you go, "This is a nothing burger," and then you explain why. Please tell me this is another nothing burger.
Well, I think that the systems for tallying have been set up through a monitoring through this adversarial system of both parties monitoring and worrying about you know each side understanding they could be victim of manipulation. And so most of these most of your election results are going to come in and be honestly dutifully tabulated. And so it's kind of like it was like with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, when it's like, look, the way they tally this thing is so, you know, got so many steps and they're processing results, and you just you can't fake it. There's no fudging of it. With a lot of election things, I think it's a system that um, you can get fraud here and there. We can find that there is some place that goes horribly wrong, but at the end, the election, the election, the recent election went very consistent with all the polls. So this is the thing: is we're not surprised by those results. So we have all the pre-election polling, and it largely went within expectations. So I am kind of like if you have something that is just very much at odds with the pre-election polling and all the other information, then we have to look at it more. But um, I think we should be worried. We should be worried not so much about the vote counting. I think we should be worried about the systemic, large scale, the manipulation of the laws. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not worried about people violating the laws and the procedures. I'm more worried about the laws and the procedures being moved in a direction that suppresses the vote, particularly of non-white people, and in the country, because that's very much what they tend to do. Uh, and because that's with your demographics, that's how you can tell. Hey, black people vote more for Democrat, so let's look at how black people vote and the things that help them to do it, and then work against it, which is exactly what happened in North Carolina. And so it often becomes very much about identifying demographic, and that the Latino population is going to be another one. And so, yeah, I'm much more worried about the nonsense they could get up to changing the laws than I am about out and out fraud within the system.
Hmm. Chris says to what we were talking about earlier about, saying 77 million people are racist, and we were kind of clarifying that's not what we're saying. He said the generalization fallacy, the pro-lim with thinking critically, is that not everyone can. Those that lack the skill will drink the Kool-Aid by the gallon, unable to discern fact from fiction. Well, yeah, this is true. It's almost like, I was talking earlier on
Mm-hmm.
a show that we recorded, like about motivational and self-help books, and the people that fall for like the general ones that just say a bunch of motivational tips and it'll work for everybody, right? And when you have, I forgot what movie it was with Ben Stiller. They were pretending to be, not pretending, they were superheroes, and they had like the one guy that's a philosopher, and he would always say stuff like, "Don't let life control you. Control life." And everybody goes, "Oh, the wisdom." And it's like, really? Really? Those are the people that fall for the Kool-Aid, that you could just say this little phrase or a catchphrase, "Make America Great Again," and everybody thinks you're trying to do the right thing and bring back those American values that no one still has explained to us exactly what is going to happen to make America great. No one has laid that out, how we're going to make America great again, and what are these values that we're missing, uh, that we need to bring back, that's going to help this situation. So there's that. Secondly, what we're going to talk about with the infighting. I was talking to Harold about this before. Obama receiving backlash by certain black people because he supported the Democratic candidate in Virginia instead of the Republican candidate who's black, as if, he's supposed to support a Republican candidate. That would be foolish, number one. But that Republican candidate, I think, is a loon, but that's just my opinion. But generally, when someone doesn't want to support someone in their party that they think is bad, they just don't say anything. That's their way of not supporting that candidate. He doesn't just support a candidate just because they're a Democrat. Dave has mentioned it before. What did he used to? How upset was he at Biden for running? And what did he used to walk in and say to Biden during his campaigns? Remember you talked about that, Dave?
Uh,
God, I gotta start clipping clips. He said he walked in before and he said, "What are you doing? You're screwing this up," about his campaign
that wasn't me.
messaging.
I I don't know what you're talking about.
I've got to find the clip. Oh, it's the second time you've done that to
Uh-oh.
me. I'm
Uh-oh.
gonna find the clip now. No, I gotta find it and I'm gonna bring it on the next.
I don't know what it like. If I knew about it, I could believe I said it, but I don't
Oh,
know what anecdote you're talking about.
don't worry. I gotta get the clip now. Now I got
Uh-oh.
work to do. I got
Uh-oh.
homework. Dang it.
Well,
All right.
what I
All
would
right.
say,
Harold, go ahead and speak on that, Harold.
what I would say in response to that is those same individuals who would come after Barack Obama for him inserting his opinion, his views, his values on certain matters are the same individuals that most likely didn't cast a vote for him. So, I mean, no matter what he says, did they support him during his election? I mean, that's a question that I would ask because at the end of the day, if you're going to criticize him for not supporting a black woman on the other side of the political aisle, I need to know if you're, because that tells me you're on that side of the aisle. If you believe I support that person, did you support me when I was running for office? If we're gonna keep it a buck, let's keep it a buck. Either we're gonna vote black all the way down, regardless of party affiliation, or you're not. And this is what it sounds like to me. They want him to vote quote unquote black all the way down, as opposed to looking at the political practices and policies of that particular individual, which I heard some of the things that she had said and which were crazy and outlandish. So why would they? In other words, they're going to be dismissive or ignore her policies that she's espoused, but yet they want him to just embrace any and everything she puts out there just because she's a black person. And I won't use the woman because woman, her gender has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering who these people are that would even think that it was possible that Barack Obama would endorse a Republican over a Democrat. I mean, I'm just like, what universe, especially now, right, with what's going on and how tight it is. I'm just like, who the hell's saying that? That's the stupidest damn thing. That sounds so out of step, and so that's like Trump saying that London is got Sharia law in it, right? You know, he's pulling a meme back from the well, maybe not 90s, but from decades ago. And that's just so out of date. And um also the other thing too is that idea you've got to ignore the candidate's quality, right? You got to say not only is he going to endorse somebody who's not in his party, he's going to endorse somebody who just has just just obvious deep flaws, right? Why would you do that? And oh, by the way, wasn't Obama the post-racial guy, right?
Huh?
Wasn't that at the time the hope?
Supposedly.
And wasn't he the guy who was all, hey, look, we're not going to knee jerk on these things, and so I mean that's his brand to do that. So all right, that plane landed in the hangar. I'll shut up.
Well, I mean, darn, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, because I always see these things on social media where when they mention Obama, you'll see these comments from a sect of people going, the most divisive president ever and made America more racist. And I'm like, well, I'm just like talking to people like that. You just can't. I forgot what comedian or whatever person said. It's hard to have an argument with someone who's smart. It's incredibly hard to have it with someone stupid.
Bill
So
Murray.
yeah,
It's hard to win an argument with someone who's smart. It's impossible to win one with someone who's stupid.
because it's just
Or
like, oh my god. So
yeah,
now that we've had the whole SNAP benefits going on, you got to the thing that we're talking about is people showing their true colors. So they kept putting 40 million Americans were losing their SNAP benefits, and you had people going on social media saying, "Oh, they'd spend it on weaves anyway," and all that. I was like, "Who are you talking about when you say that?" Number one, I understand what you're doing, but people never. They just speak and don't think. It's not 40 million Americans sitting at home on a couch being lazy, sucking up taxpayer money. Majority of those people were working Americans who aren't paid a living wage. We talked about that. And you're leaving out senior citizens. You're leaving out the children in that 40 million equation and people on with disabilities. So it's the canvassing we just talked about earlier, generalization, 40 million people doesn't mean 40 million unemployed people sitting at home being lazy and getting food stamps. You know, I my neighbor gets food stamps. She gets $238 a month. That's like $7 and something a day. So it's not like she's just raking in the dough. But Congress, while the government was shut down, they get $79 a day per diem for meals. Anyway, so Dave,
Insane.
why'd you make that look? Why'd you
Insane.
make that look, Dave?
it's well. And the thing about it is just the utter ignorance that comes up here.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the Democrats will have the shutdown because they want health care for illegal immigrants.
Jesus.
It's illegal to give undocumented people health care, except if they show up in an emergency room. Yes, any human being that is
That's not
brought
good.
in danger of loss of life or
Yeah.
sight. I think they have rules about this,
Yes.
and it's like, and I'm like, if that's not the lowest common denominator of Christian values, that we're gonna save someone from dying imminent death or loss of limb or light or eyesight. That seems to be the bar is pretty freaking low there, folks. But then the whole thing with SNAP, oh, these people need to work. Unless you have children, right? You can be on these benefits with dependent children and not work. But if you don't have children and you aren't working, you don't get these benefits. We did that under the Clinton administration. That's when we reformed welfare, and all that other stuff. And so, it's just this thing of like, it's kind of, and then people saying, oh, these asylum seekers are illegals. No, they're here legally waiting for their time, right? It's the utter ignorance of the situation that, and it's the thing of like, how doesn't the media call the people out on this? I mean,
Well, Bill Burr said the media doesn't have balls anymore, but
yeah,
what
but
one thing they don't
But
realize is it helps you. Remember, you guys remember this in the 80s and 90s. If you didn't have insurance, show up to an emergency room if you want to. You die waiting for someone to help you because you didn't have insurance.
and you also had insurance companies dropping people out of nowhere for whatever reason that they desired to. But I think also the part that I look at is if you're saying an undocumented person
Mhm.
is receiving these benefits, then you need to do some research to figure out what government employee allowed that to transpire, and then you discipline that employee, i.e., arrest them, charge them, and whatever the charges, whatever the final decision is, then that's what should be done. But we keep on blaming the quote unquote undocumented person who is not legally able to receive such benefits. We make these accusations. They've never given any receipts. They've only made accusations that the media itself has continued to push throughout the airwaves and on television screens, which has caused a lot of the chaos that we're experiencing right now, unfortunately.
And I see McPhail talking about Christian values. I just spit my drink. Wasn't aware this is a comedy hour. Well, I'm a big believer in a distinction between big C and little C Christian values.
I
And
don't believe
little little c Christian values means the values, right? The values of the poor, and not, divorced from professions of faith, of who or what you think Jesus was, what God you think is out there, but just the idea. And I had a friend in high school tell me, it was one of the best compliments I ever got. He said, Dave, I know you're agnostic, you're not really faithful, but you're the best Christian I know. And he was talking about the way I acted, and said that's been a bitch to live up to, by the way. Uh, and I haven't been able to do it on a daily basis, but most of the time I am. And I think those are good values, and I think those are things. And we got the lady calling around trying to get churches to give her a bottle of formula, right? And kind of talking that very few of them were willing to do it.
Mhm.
And these are big C Christian churches,
Yeah, she
and
wasn't calling
the
small.
mosque,
Yeah,
the mosque and the granddad. She got a hold of a grandpa at one church whose response was, "What flavor? Where can I meet?" You
yeah.
know, and but I think those are things that are still important and need to be embraced and mobilized more. And maybe we need better words for it, but you know that, to my mind, is a very big part of what a lot of progressive have. A lot of my friends in Hollowell live this shit. They live their life that way. They are open and caring and welcoming to people, and that's what DEI is. That's what um, being LGBTQIA plus, or however many letters we want to put in there. But those folks understand, and they, I find that they live those values, the values, or the interpersonal things that are there. And I think that's very important to emphasize. And so that's why I'll talk about it, and say that it's important that care for we care for people around them. Yeah.
Yeah, remember, people who truly have Christian values are different than people who have Old Testament values. I'll just
Yeah.
just say that.
And to call them little c, I mean, I don't. That's maybe not a good way of doing it, because Muslims absolutely, the third pillar of Islam is almsgiving.
Mhm.
And in the Hadith, I think Muhammad said, "If you go to sleep with a full belly, you aren't a believer if you go to sleep with a full belly when your neighbor doesn't." And
Yeah.
so and certainly in Judaism they have these values as well. And I think they tend to be ubiquitous, common ones that go across religions. And so my little c Christian is a very maybe poor way of putting it, but I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of meat on that bone, and I think it needs to be embraced, and I think it needs to be emphasized more.
Oh, it's almost like, hey, I might be a billionaire and run a company, but I'm sleeping at night knowing the lowest person on my payroll makes enough money in a day to buy a gallon of milk, a carton of eggs, and bread, and that whole day's paycheck is gone. you know, Living wage. We talked about this before. That's why when you go to certain countries and you tip the waiter, they turn and look at you like you're crazy because they get paid enough to survive, not enough to where they need you to tip them after every meal for them to survive. Oh wait, I had that up, but I didn't read it. Stacy says the rationale of making sense. You're assuming we have people in power who are capable of the same level of rationale. We're living in the age of narcissism. This is the first time because I always hate people, and this isn't towards her, that always say the government doesn't do anything. Everyone in the government's a liar. As if there's no one in government actually trying to do the right thing, and there's no one in government actually working. But every time you see that image of Trump coming out to talk, and you've got Kennedy next to him, and Dr. Oz, and like the caravan of idiots, I call it, come on there. You go, what am I looking at? I feel like I'm looking at a Saturday Night Live skit. every time they have a press conference. I can't tell the difference anymore.
And normally I would push back against people saying that the leaders aren't rational, and because I'm always like, well, look, they just have different immediate
Yeah,
incentives. But the
normally they would. Yeah.
narcissism line, I think, really, when we look at the White House now, you do not have a rational mind, you do not have a competent mind working there, and you have people pandering to it, and you have a lot of very rational people in that White House pandering to a guy who is of diminished capacity, who is a narcissist, who is just fundamentally, it's that audience of one problem that's always been there. And you have a lot of people who are very rational if they're playing to that audience of one. Caroline Levitt, with everything she says, right, is probably getting nothing but positive feedback about how she's acting from one person. And what's scary is that I look at the Senate Republicans and go, the F are you guys doing? How have you bought into this? Like, the White House is that way because there's one guy who is a narcissist and he's polluted the place. But the rest of you, Mike Johnson, why are you playing this game? Thune and Republicans, why are you doing this? And I haven't quite, and they may be coming back. They may the Senate Republicans may be waking up to the reality of their interests. But a lot of times, though, they have very convoluted immediate incentives that make them do things that appear irrational when in fact they are deeply rational but very self-interested.
Because they're also realizing the ground that they're losing. And then some of these areas where they've done the pre polling where 78 to 82% of the people voted Republican, those people are now up to 92% voting Democrat. So you're turning more people off than you are turning people on, and that's those people in that 77 million that you're talking about, Dave. The non-racists, the non-bigots, those are the ones that are going, all right, I've seen enough, which is crazy. It took you the second go round to see enough is crazy in itself. Um,
If
and
I may assert or
let,
insert,
let me
um,
let me read this real quick, and we'll go to you. Chris says
uh,
they're fantastic values. The problem is the majority only spout the word of God when it's beneficial, not the right. Not right. I'm sorry. Those that do live the values generally fall silent when others don't. Well, yeah, silence is. I always say silence is acceptance. Go ahead,
No,
Harold.
no, no. He's saying that the people who are living the values
Mhm.
are, my read
tend
of
to be
that,
more silent. Tend to be more
are
silent.
being silent, not talking. And that's my point,
Yeah, that's what I
is
said.
that the
To
people
me,
that
silence
actually
is
walk the
acceptance.
walk need to claim it, need to own it, and it needs to be core of what they are and what they're about. And um, I just, like I say, I go to Hollowell, right? And Hollowell is a very open and welcoming community to everybody,
You've never
right?
went to
But
me.
particularly to gay people. And there's somebody's got a video out there who they made a song about Hollowell, saying that in Hollowell all they want to do is have gay sex. And so, you
Jesus.
know, to to people who see the LGBTQIA plus community, and just they're perverts, they're groomers, it's all about sex to them, and they don't quite peep to the fact that these folks are very open, because they're very welcoming to people, it's very progressive, that the gay people move there because they felt that community was already like that, right? It became a haven for gay people because you could live there as a gay person and not lose your house, right? That the landlord won't kick you out, which back was, in the 80s, 70s, 80s was absolutely what would happen. And so you built this community there, and therefore it's a community built on these values. And there was one politician, I think Betsy C. She is was talking about her experience, and she said, she's living there, she's got a partner, they're raising kids, and her neighbor is a talk radio guy who's going on the air running down uh, people, running down gay marriage, running down gays with families and all, and he calls her up and he says, "I'm having trouble with my kid. I see that you're such a great parent. Could you help me?" And she said, and she's like, her read of it is she's like, "Look, yes, I'm going to do that. Of course, I'm going to help you. But do you understand the irony that every day you are on the air talking about this and you're attacking my family?" "Oh, I'm not doing that. I'm talking about other people." And she's like, "No, you're talking about me. You're talking about my family." And so that's the thing, though, is that very often I find that that's what and so when I go to Hollowell and I see that, that's what I see. And they don't talk about it, but I think we should, and I think they should claim, Democrats and people on the left should claim that, and as much as possible.
We
So that's my tirade.
No,
Whatever.
we all said the same thing. Basically, what I was saying was silence. I always say silence is acceptance. That's why when he said silence, I always say silence is accepted. Just like if you would never sit there and let someone be overtly racist next to you, you're the type of person that would say something, Dave. But if you're the type of person that sit there and just watches it, it looks like you're in agreement. Hollowell is so accepting that and inviting that Dave has invited every friend there in our group but me. But anyway, we're gonna move on.
Okay.
Who the
But
hell
as I
am
was,
I invited? I mean, oh, I invite Pete and Crystal.
wow.
Wait, Brad and Chris haven't been up there?
They're maybe going to talk about. First of all, I'm not inviting them to Hollow. I'll invite them to my camp.
No, I just have
Wow.
to find a
If
way to dig at you. Go.
you are welcome.
I know I
I
am.
think I've
Well,
mentioned this.
I think you welcomed me just by saying gay sex. But anyway, Harold.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's a
Okay.
terrible
That's
segue to Harold.
interesting here. But hey, we'll roll with the punches, I guess.
That was
But
not
no,
on
no.
purpose.
What I was
He's
going to
your uncle.
insert.
Wait.
Ixnay.
What are you saying, Dave?
He's your uncle.
No,
I know when it
Maybe you'll
came
talk
out of
about
my
sex to
mouth,
your uncle there,
no pun
man. I'm
intended.
just going to creep the guy out. I'm
I,
sorry.
Jesus, he's gonna give me a whooping.
anyway, as we move forward,
Yeah, there we
before we
go.
get tuned out.
He loves
No,
me.
the bottom line is going back to the original topic where we were talking about the issue of really what you all described was priorities.
Uh-huh.
You you're talking about rational, irrational. No. It's a matter of priorities. These people in office know what they're doing. They know what their agendas are. They know who they're trying to make policies to benefit, and they know who they're trying to hurt at the end of the day. And they will try to cloak themselves or wrap themselves in the word Christianity when, they think it's going to allow people to, I guess, view them different, other than the quote unquote tyrants many of them are. And so when you look at, how policies are being crafted or what the agenda is, we live in a pseudo-Christian nation. You can't start a nation under slavery or human trafficking and then claim you're Christian. Because I even wrestle with this in my book, where we talk about, or the topic of this issue of slavery, Christianity, racism, Christianity. And at the end of the day, all of it is sin. If we're going to deal with it, let's deal with it for what it really is. And when you prioritize things, for example, Matthew 6 talks about you can't serve two masters. You're going to love the one and hate the other. And see, right now, America loves capitalism. It loves capital. And so until America reprograms or deprograms and reprograms, we're going to be stuck with our elected officials. Now, what I would like to speak to the millennial, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, I would like to encourage them, or Alpha generation, I would like to encourage them. Listen, this is your future that's at stake at the moment. My daughter, Gen Z, She just missed Alpha by, I guess, a couple of years or so. But this is their future. And they loaned it to us so that we would hopefully make it better for them when they receive it. But now, we're in the process of trashing it or destroying it, even worse than what it already is. And so what we need to look at when we look at these practices, when we look at these programs, when we look at all of these things that our society or our elected officials are doing, we realize that they're using it as a shield to hopefully mask the evil that they are really casting upon us as a people. And we can look at it from the shutdown, which was a temporary inconvenience, but now with it closing or the lights being turned back on, look at the long-term damage that's going to be done
Yeah,
with the policies that are going to be implemented as a result of what may potentially happen. And until it's all signed and moving forward, there's still a chance of trying to get things going in the right direction. But I think if we're going to look at this idea of Christianity, and I'm sure Dave is much more acquainted with Christian nationalism and that movement and how it really has nothing to do with church and more to do with power, than than most of us in understanding how these whole political pieces are put together. We've been beginning to enlighten folks so that they'll understand that Christianity is just being overly used. It's been co-opted, and it's really misleading people to believe that we are something that we are not as a nation.
we saw in the every time Vivek went to a Turning Point event, or he's doing one of his events, people constantly badgering him that this is a Christian nation founded
Mhm.
by Christians and calling his gods pagan. We've seen JD Vance like tiptoe around, which I don't know how his wife feels, but tiptoe around defending his wife when people say certain things. It's just crazy.
Listen, the way he defends his wife, I'm surprised he's still married. I mean, that's just me, but that's just
I
me.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, good Lord,
I don't
Lori,
know any woman that would tolerate that type of defending of her. I just don't get it.
I'm not going to speculate on who would marry that asshole.
Lord have mercy. Have mercy. Have mercy.
well,
I I mean, just I don't know
sometimes
what the thinking was, and it's you do
sometimes
you. I'm not judging, but
sometimes the person you marry isn't the person that you end up with through the marriage. I mean, you remember this is a guy who went from calling Trump Hitler to saying Trump's the greatest thing since sliced
I'm
bread.
a never Trump guy. There's a song. They've auto cut that.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about JD Vance is he is the chameleon, right? And the guy's going to be president,
Oh,
right? It
I
was
keep,
like with great probability, JD Vance is going to be the 48th president of the United States. And I just don't know
Re-election.
how you can't see that as being a very likely probability. And the problem is
Re-election.
he's a chameleon, right? I mean, this is, I think, the big thing about him is he will try to calculate what he needs to do at any given time to please the people he thinks are important to please. How that translates to being president is going to be very curious. And so if I was to be less flippant about who would be married to him, that's a person he's not the guy you married because he's going to reinvent himself. And he's going to reinvent himself big time when he becomes president. And God only knows how that's going to go, right? I mean, you assume that there would be some interests that would press themselves on him, and he would perceive that these are the people I need to work with.
mhm.
Um, but I don't know how that's going to go. I think that's going to be a really tough one to call, but that's what I'm afraid we'll walk through.
Well,
I,
if it was the Heritage Foundation that pushed Trump to make him his vice, then he's definitely going to go, fall in line with respect to what they want to do. Now, as far as beyond that, I don't know. I don't know what to expect or how things will flow.
My understanding is that he was largely lobbied for by Don Jr. and Eric, and that he was presented to his father um, from them, and that so it was people with the name Trump that got in in Trump's ear, and now that could stand some investigation and cross examination. But the people that influenced Trump to pick him may not be the people that have influence over him,
Mhm.
right? And I doubt that, because I think JD can drop those people like Don Jr. is going to be dropped like a hot potato,
All of them. Yeah.
because JD is not going to want anyone with the Trump name around him, right? He's going to want to establish himself as his own thing. So, I'm just kind of wondering, hey, you've been a chameleon, but now you've got to define yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to be free in a way for the first time. And we can hope that he does that in a more reasonable way. But
Well,
I don't
uh,
know.
Chris says, my understanding is that most of the founding fathers were Masons. The country was founded on religious freedom, neither in what you want without fear of persecution, founded on human values. People always talk about the founding fathers, but we got to remember people were here before the founding fathers, the Pilgrims and all of that. And most of them were Protestant separatists that fled England because they wanted to be able to practice their religion the way they wanted to practice it and not be told you must practice your religion this specific way. Some of them said it's more important to have a personal relationship with God than congregate to a church and do all these things. So there was a bunch of different ideas, a bunch of different sects. It wasn't sects, not sex. Sex. Sects. God, I can't say that word. Say the
SECT.
word. But I think people forget about it. They always go to the founding fathers, but you got to forget about the people who uh, came here and slowly took over. But they were coming here because they were mostly Protestant and they were separatist.
And they were
Well,
slave owners.
there are a lot of Catholics here too.
Yes.
Rhode Island and Maryland in particular
Well, yeah. I'm saying
were
like first landing.
sanctuaries for
I'm
and,
talking pre-colonies. Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, when they were set up, they're basically you got the hell. You weren't doing really good being Catholic in Britain at that point,
Yeah.
and so you come. I'm pretty sure. I know Rhode Island was very heavily Catholic, and so a lot of these places were refuges for different groups that had and at that point there would have been much more disagreement about you know within groups or sexed. Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Between different flavors of Christianity,
Yes.
right? And so a lot of the freedom of religion was trying to make sure that one denomination of Christianity, most of them were all Christians. Um, a lot of the emphasis on freedom of religion was that there's such diversity of feeling and opinion and uh, within the different denominations of Christianity that were really really important. And so there was also, I mean, they set up a set of rules, they set up a set of institutions, and what the founding fathers were or weren't. I'm they were deists, they had strange ideas, but some of them, but I think they set up a set of rules to guide action within, and those are the key things. And I think you need to look at those and say that's what they wanted. They wanted people, the values that they wanted to promote were the values that the people expressed through government, right? So the government is not founded on values. The government is a way for people to express their values, and you know, and it is through there, right? And it is, so if you are Christian and you vote for things that are Christian, right? And you
Right. Well,
represent them.
because there has not been. Well, I looked this up a while ago. It was years ago, and I wanted to see was there any non-Christian presidents or vice presidents. There's only been one vice president that was one president or vice president that's been Catholic. Everyone's been Christian, but the information says this.
Catholic
Interestingly,
is
even
Christian.
you know what I'm saying. identify as Catholic is you get what I'm
Well,
saying.
there have been 2 Catholic presidents.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
J.D. Vance would be the 3rd.
I I get that. That's what I'm saying. But we know Catholicism is Christianity, but there's a reason why you call yourself Catholic and you call yourself Christian. They separate the two names. I don't. Don't fight me for it. But even though these presidents said that they were Christian, people did believe they were atheists. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and William Howard Taft were speculated to be atheists. And then, I was going down the rabbit hole and read about this. I was like, I was reading something about when someone had an issue and made the joke of Obama might swear in on the Quran, and people were like, I don't care if it's a coloring book. If you're going to tell the truth, you're going to tell the truth. If you're going to lie, you're going to lie. President Van Buren, Phil Moore, two Harrisons, Gerhardt, John Tyler, Zachary Taylor, Franklin Pierce, Chester Arthur, William Howard Taft, Calvin Coolidge, Jimmy Carter, and Grover Cleveland did not. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong line. Sorry. Thomas Jefferson and Calvin Coolidge did not use the Bible in their oath taking ceremonies. Theodore Roosevelt did not use the Bible when taking the oath in 1901, nor did John Quincy Adams, who swore on a book of law with the intention that he was swearing on the Constitution and not religion.
Yeah. That John Quincy Adams, he's a lot closer to the original guys, and that's more kind of the thinking that was going on there.
Mhm.
And and for a lot of times it was you kept religion out of it, right? Because
Separation of church and state.
well, and there's also that thing, the thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. What that really, when you talk to scholars about what that commandment meant, was not saying Jesus Christ or uttering a blasphemy like that. Um, it was about not invoking God's name in a trivial way or in ways that are deceptive, and it very much and so whenever I see politicians out seeking to gain power and using religion and invoking God in their arguments and for their support, I'm like, that is absolutely what that commandment was originally meant to deny. You shouldn't be bringing it up and using that for support and appealing in that way. And the original, I think a lot of the guys back then, people who studied Latin and Greek and maybe read the Bible in these original, I think they might have been more aware of that concept of it. And or certainly they exhibited the idea that it dirties religion to bring it in, kind of like there was a rule that you never said a lady's name in a bar, right? Because in saying a lady's name in a bar was to tarnish her reputation. It was nothing good comes of it, and you could be called out for a duel in certain circumstances over that. And that concept, which was much more common back then, and that I think would be a similar thing. Like you don't bring up God in a political debate, and except at benedictions and other things, but
Or
and
when
I
it's,
think we've gotten very far away from that.
or as when Harold says, when it's convenient. You bring it up when it's convenient. Well, we're wrapping up. I didn't even get to talk to the thing. I want to say I'm proud of New Yorkers. New York has been given ICE the most hell. I'm watching videos of New Yorkers. They're like, what are you doing? We're all immigrants here. Like, what are you doing? Like, get out of here. We don't want you here. I'm watching all the videos of when an ICE agents pull up to a place, someone calls because it's illegally parked and it's getting towed away. Um, it's been the little ice war. I mean, it's not fun because people are being abused, having their rights abused.
Right.
But I am love watching ICE agents run down the street trying to get their truck off of the tow truck. And these tow truck drivers are faster than the ones in South Beach. I'm telling you, they are hooking these things up and lights flashing and everything, right? And police are it's crazy. I'm looking at places where police were thought of as the enemy, and now police are thought of as the good guys. And the police are getting sick of them because they're running around with police on their shirt and they're doing very stupid things.
Well, and they're just making themselves inherently unwelcome. These guys, they're going to be American Nuremberg trials at some point.
Oh,
And
yeah.
these guys, and by the way, you just have a great point from C. McPhail there. That if that wasn't a violation of the original concept of that taking the Lord's name in vain, that's probably one of the greatest examples of that, of what we're talking about. But the whole thing though is we do see, by the way, now the FBI is starting to say, hey, we're getting so many impersonators, right? The reason that we make cops identify themselves, have badges, and do all these things is so that we believe in, and now they have these impersonators. And so the FBI is, even though it's run by Kash Patel, they're starting to say, hey, you need this, that what you're doing is just not right. It's poor professionalism, bad process. But it's also interesting to see the cleverness and the innovativeness of the public in this situation, and it's very encouraging. And you don't need the Second Amendment. You can resist. If you're going to resist, you're going to resist.
You know what else
And
is also encouraging, Harold?
Dawson.
Let's look at what Dave did a couple weeks ago.
Oh Lord, Lord.
Which one's
yeah,
Dave, Harold?
yep, that's me. You're
Which
probably
one's
wondering how I got.
Dave? Is he
I'm
the-
in the frog.
Oh, I wanted Harold to guess.
Oh, I'm
I,
sorry.
there's no way I would have gotten it. I'm just saying.
I'm in the
What in the
frog,
world? I didn't know
and
they made those. What?
Harold, are you familiar with the frog in Portland? The guy in the frog
I
suit in
am. I am.
That's the essence of that one. And that was on Memorial Bridge in Augusta, Maine. Obviously, no, I didn't take the picture. I did post a video from inside the frog, and it sucks being in there. It really sucks being in there.
That's commitment.
I gotta say.
That
Um,
is commitment.
That's
I was
funny.
so jealous of these other people with costumes that had gloves, right? Because that dinosaur
That's
thing,
funny.
your hand ends in a glove, and you can hold stuff. I ended up in this like Kermit the Frog mitt thing, and couldn't hold anything. Meanwhile, like moisture from some God knows where is dripping all around me. But I was very proud because I was the only frog there. I couldn't believe it. I thought there'd be a bunch of us in Augusta, Maine, and where, of course, completely nonviolent, except for the Trump supporter that got into an altercation and produced a firearm, and the
Uh,
constabulary of Augusta cuffed and stuffed that dude.
but Harold, you guys are the violent ones.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, you know, it's always a leftist who goes and shoots up a school, right? It's always a leftist who
I'm sorry.
unibombs a building. It's always a leftist who sends pipe bombs in the mail. It's always right.
We got nothing better to do.
Jeez.
That's all I can say.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
I mean, because there are two major historical proponents, or two of the most prominent proponents of nonviolence: Mahatma Gandhi and the Reverend Martin Luther King.
Okay. Right.
And yeah, those are some clearly not left wing.
Don't you get me started on Mahatma Gandhi. All right. So this is why they say never research people. Great
Never
show
meet a
today,
hero.
Dave. Great show today, Harold. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Chris, for hanging out with us the whole time. We will see you guys in a couple weeks. Where, of course, I don't know what we're gonna do in 3 years when Trump is gone. And no, we're gonna have fun because we're gonna talk about other shit like we did during the Biden years. All right,
Yeah,
great show, guys.
hold the Bible upside down and do a whole lot. There's a lot to do. Yeah, a lot of us.
Have mercy.
Peace.